Hello friends, I'm Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. 3 weeks ago, the Goodreads Choice Award nominees came out, and I set out to read one book from all of the 15 categories. I put out this video originally, which went through my TBR. Basically what I did is I put all of the categories, the genres, in one jar, and I put 15 different prompts in another jar, like my mom chooses the book that I read from this category. I read the first chapter of all the books in a category and pick one from that. My favorite cover, something that matches my outfit, etc. So the deciding of the TBR is there if you want to watch that first. But also there were a few decisions I had to make in this vlog. And at this point I've read the 15. There has been some wins. There's been some losses. Almost everything was not the rating I thought it would get when I went into it. And without further ado, this is the reading vlog. There are timestamps if you want to jump to certain genres, and I'll let me from 3 weeks ago take over. Audiobook. My favorite cover, I'm so sorry to report, upon reflection, I don't like a single cover here. Not one of these. I go, ooh, pretty. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. The most inoffensive cover here that I do appreciate, I like enough, is James by Percival Everett, which is one that I already wanted to read. I'm a sucker for a simple gold and black. Do I wish it was more exciting? Probably. Of all the audiobook options, I didn't really like any of the covers, but I think that James by Percival Everett is a perfectly nice one. I also liked a book from this author earlier this year, so that helped make the decision for me, especially because in historical, where I would have preferred to read this, I have to read The Winner. That's what I pulled for that one. And then I just ran to the bookstore with the list of books that I needed for the video, and of course I bought the one by accident that I was supposed to listen to via audio. So I do have the audiobook ready because I actually got an early copy from Libro FM way earlier in the year and just never listened to it. If you don't know about the ALC program, it's like early copies of books, but it's early audiobooks that you can sign up for at Libro FM if you have like a social media presence. I'm not sure how they like decide how large your audience has to be or what kind of content you create. But that is a thing that I very much appreciate being a part of. And I'm very excited to get around to this one. I'm just headed to a hockey game, and I think I'll try to listen to a little bit of the audiobook while the day is going. Cause like we have to be at the arena an hour and a half early, and then there's ice clean in the middle. I have definitely read the Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn books. I can't remember when, I can't remember if I liked them. I can't really remember much about them. So I'm trying to figure out if the best experience is to go into James in this way or if I should reread some things first. But I think basically Jim is escaping enslavement. Well, he's running away from being enslaved, and he left his like wife behind. I'm not sure if he has children in the original story. I know that he has a wife who's actually named and children, 1 or 2 children in here. And Huck joins him in the original story because he's also running away from something. And then people think that Jim murdered Huck. And then they run into Tom Sawyer, and Tom Sawyer does something like he realizes that Jim is free and doesn't tell him or something like that. And then Jim, who is an older black man, and the 2 white children, he has to like sacrifice his freedom for one or both of them, but then at the end he does end up free, I do believe, in the original story. So I feel like the author is known to be critical of slavery within the text, but also uses many racial stereotypes, uses slurs, and a lot of Jim's storyline is at the expense of the boys' growth, development, and humor. So I'm interested to know, though I won't be able to tell until I reread the original or read some reviews about it, but I wonder if this is like a complete retelling, like it's the exact same scenes, it's the exact same plot, but from Jim or James's perspective, getting his actual thoughts and feelings and him not just being a side character. Or if Percival Everett is taking complete creative control and it's an entirely different story just with the same characters. But I'm gonna pop in the audiobook and I'll update you in a little bit with my first impressions. It's the first snow day of the year. I just walked out of the house and it's snowing. It might look like rain, but I promise you it's snow. I both love and hate the snow, so I am happy. I'm gonna get sick of it really fast. And another thing making me happy, I'm enjoying this, and I'm actually glad I have the physical book because there was this whole section that I was listening to that I wanted to read and highlight. I'm 50 pages in. It seems really familiar, so I do think it's following the same beats as the original story. He says, "How strange a world, how strange an existence, that one's equal must argue for one's equality, that one's equal must hold a station that allows airing of that argument, that one cannot make that argument for oneself, that premises of said argument must be vetted by those equals who do not agree." Because they're talking about enslavement and equality, but it's like, why can't I just be equal in, you get what the quote means. I like it a lot. I like Jim, who, I don't know if he wants to be referred to as James. That's what he's saying, is like he's choosing that name for himself, but he still gets referred to as Jim and seems to accept that. But to us, he's James, and he's talking about how he is choosing his language. The way that he's speaking is so white folks don't take him a certain way or assume certain things of him, and how he's teaching other people to speak in a vernacular that white folks like won't recognize and can't understand. And I really like the way that that conversation is being navigated. Fantastic lighting, really. Liam just got a hat trick.
Good shot,
They won, I think, 8-3, and he's now currently second in the league for points, which is pretty cool, and it's still really snowing out. Those are all my updates. I don't have a bookish update because my headphones died, so I didn't listen to my book at all, but I will now. I have finished James. I did a live show today with my channel besties, and I played Dress to Impress, and I listened to the audiobook of this. It was really good. I don't think I really get why this was in the audiobook category. Books that are in there, I imagined they were really well produced, excellently done, or maybe they all have, or a lot of them have like celebrity narrators. I actually don't know who narrated this one. It just wasn't anything special. Like, sure, it was a great narrator, but there was nothing within the actual audiobook experience that I would say this did anything more than anything else I've ever listened to. The narrator is Dominic Hoffman. Let me know if that's somebody I should know who that is. The thing about James is I didn't find this funny. I didn't find this darkly satirical in the way that I found The Trees to be. And I see that language used so much in reviews for this, and I just didn't get that. Because this feels like such a clear 4.5, I now have to move this to a 5. I will assert, this is not something you have to read after rereading or reading for the first time this, because this is not this retold. It is Jim's story. He's not a side character. He's not a sidekick. This is his side quest. This is what happens after. This is his actual life experience. James as a novel absolutely takes on a life of its own as James the character designs a life of his own. It was very good. I'm so glad because I kicked off the video with this one. And also when I read The Trees, I said, I think Percival Everett is just an author for me. There's just, I feel something here. And I was right because we got another win. Erasure, I hope someday will be a huge one for me. But as for now, we're moving on to book number 2. Our highest rated, history and biography. Okay, I don't hate that idea because I don't know that it'll be easy for me to pick something in history and biography. So I'll just pick whatever is popular. This has a 4.49, 4.1, 4.6, 4, 4.5, 4.2, 4.59. What is this? There's an American flag on the cover. America's favorite government teacher offers thrilling, heartfelt stories of ordinary American heroes. So in the initial live show, the first time I ever looked at this category, I looked at the ratings of all of the books. And this one, The Small and the Mighty, was, I think, by far the highest. Or actually, maybe there was one that was like a 4.5 and this one was a 4.6. But everything else ranged from like 4.2 down to 3.6. The Small and the Mighty, I grabbed the audiobook for because, well, I don't know if it's because it's an American-centric book that it's not widely available in Canada. It's not like at my local bookstore, even the huge chain one. So I just got the audiobook also because, I mean, honestly, I wanted to color. So that's what I did while I listened to the first 2 stories or experiences. I thought it was going to be about like everyday Americans, like people I've never heard of, like some random person who you only saw in, like, she just did this really deep dive research into like a newspaper from 70 years ago and there was this random woman who did this and she changed her neighborhood. But no, the subtitle is 12 Unsung Americans Who Changed the Course of History from the Founding to the Civil Rights Movement. So it is people who I've heard of. The first, I mean, I don't have the physical book, so I can't see who's mentioned, but the first two I had heard of before. Clara Brown and Virginia Randolph. They were both Black women who, Clara Brown, she was enslaved and she fought to become like, well, she did a lot of things, but one thing, she's in the Smithsonian as like a statue. She was, I thought it was America's first woman pioneer, but maybe it was Colorado specifically. Getting that designation was a big deal. And then the next story was a woman who had a big impact on education. I like who she's featuring. It's definitely people who, even though I've heard of, you might have heard of if you pick up the book, they are still underappreciated. I don't know if I wish it was like structured differently or she said things differently, but it does feel a little bit like a white woman who just discovered that like slavery and oppression are bad and thinks that you don't, other people don't think that, and she just wants to teach you that those things are bad. Just the way she's telling the story. So this woman was an educator and the school, I'm parsing history, but the school doesn't have the funds to keep running. So she decides to buy the plot of land, save up all of her money, go into debt, and buy the plot of land so the school can be on it, and then sell the land back to like the school district so they can keep the school on it. And then years and years later, a bunch of people are like, oh, you should let her like out of her debt. Like you should help her, you should support her. And the county's like, yeah, okay. And then I guess in, history, people are like, oh, that's so beautiful. Like, that's so great that they didn't give her any more debt. But like, obviously that's ridiculous that they should have had to do that in the first place, that they should have had to be forced into it. It's kind of like when you see this feel-good story, scrolling through Facebook, it's like, oh my gosh, this person helped all of these people who were starving and that's so great. But like, why were they starving? Like maybe let's focus on the actual systemic issues rather than the feel, like yes, it's a feel-good story, but like maybe people not starving first should be the focus, right? And I feel like that's kind of most of our interpretation, but the way that this author is writing it just to me, maybe it's because it's the audiobook, it's just coming across like she's the first person who's ever had this thought. Because she's like, everyone in history thought it was so great that they did this thing for her, but really, if you think about it, she should have never been put into that position in the first place. And like some Black women have been oppressed and that's bad. Again, I'm parsing her words, but that's just how her narration style is coming across to me. And I'm not loving it for that, but I am excited to continue listening and seeing who else she's gonna tell me about. Unfortunately for me, and for you, I guess, I don't really have anything to say about this book. I'm giving it a 2. I'm giving the book itself and the writing a 2. I'm giving the audiobook a 2. This is actually in the audiobook category, which I do not understand. Maybe because the author is a podcaster, she's known for speaking. It just made sense to put her in this category, and people think that it's good. I don't think it's good. I don't think she did a good job narrating her own book. I think she sounded really condescending. She sounded like she was talking down to you, like this was a book for children. And her just cadence of speaking, I found really grating. I hope it goes without saying that the content of the book and the idea behind it and acknowledging people who have been either forgotten in history or under-acknowledged in history is a great thing to be reading. But I just don't think that it was done well for my preferences. Each section wasn't really about one person. It was about a whole bunch of people. And then sometimes it would be about this person and then switch to this person. It lost the plot, so to speak, quite frequently. She'd be talking about somebody and then she'd be talking about a time period and then talk about her take on history. And it's not that I disagree with anything that she was saying. Well, I don't know if that's true, but it was just really chaotic. It was kind of hard to follow. My favorite section was on Inez Mulholland and like women's suffrage in the 1910s, 1920s, when she passed away. I think that's when it was. There was a section on Booker T. Washington that I was disappointed by like what it didn't quite cover, but they are small moments. It's not a whole history of a person or an experience. I understand that she wants it to be more engaging than just reading, because she's reading the textbook, getting the information, trying to deliver it to us with her own personal take and just making it more interesting with the writing style, but I didn't care for it. I learned a little bit, but not enough to give this any more than a 2. So moving on. So for the members' choice, they are going to be selecting the members are choosing my science fiction read. They whittled it down to 4. These are the 4. And I'm now going to look. I posted, I think 4 hours ago, and I'm gonna see what the results are. Oh, it's Moon of the Turning Leaves. I actually really didn't think they would pick that one. That got 35% of the vote. Now it may seem silly because I think less than 5 minutes ago I told you it was snowing. I, for some reason, was not expecting it to snow today. I just left the house and the weather was perfect. And I thought, I'll just wear my sweater and I'll wear my running shoes and I'm gonna drop off my vehicle to get a roof rack on for winter so we can bring snowboards up to the hill. And I was gonna go for a walk to maybe like a thrift store. And I have to kill an hour and I didn't bring a jacket. And I guess there's a chance there's an umbrella in the back. Let's check together. Oh, it's wet, 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 it's wet. This is the moment. No. I have a tripod. I do have an umbrella. I have taco plates. I have a tissue box. And I have my umbrella. Now let's take one final look at my vehicle without the rack. Because the rack better be beautiful and humongous with what Rob spent on it. I'm just here to get them to install it because they couldn't when he went and picked it out. Oh, this is like, something was spilled on this. Okay, anyway, at least I can go for a walk because I was gonna just ask the people, can I sit in the vehicle for an hour while you do this? I do have a toque and 1 single glove. My only fear with this roof rack is that it's gonna be really long. I am reading Moon of the Turning Leaf. Oh yeah, I was gonna go on a walk and put in the audiobook because I haven't used my Spotify hours this month yet. This is what I'm reading for the sci-fi dystopian kind of category. And I think my channel members picked this because they know I own it. They know how much I love the first book. And maybe they know, like either they want to know for themselves if it's worth picking up, but I think it's more they know that I'm scared to read it because I love the first book so much, but also it was so long ago and I never expected it to have a sequel. I never desired a sequel, that there might not be any other situation in which I would force myself to read it. So they're going to be the ones to make me read it. And I think that's a great decision. And I will let you know how everything's going. They just called to tell me it's done. I'm terrified to see how big it is. Let's get my reaction to it. How exciting. I know this is what you're here for. Oh, it's cute. What the heck? He really oversold it. He said we could fit 5 snowboards and snowboard bags on top of that. He must have meant on top of as in like liters, not on top of like stacked. I thought I was gonna have clearance to go through drive-throughs. Look how cute. The audiobook for this is definitely good. I like the narrator, but I'm doing a lot of audio listens lately and also like in tandem with another video I'm currently filming. I have some audiobooks going. So I think it was probably the first 100 pages I did that way and then I switched to it physically and that's where I'm at, 200 pages in. I think the same thing that I thought before I started was that for me, this book doesn't need to exist. I'm so happy for the author because I obviously want somebody who I enjoy their book in the past to have a thriving career. I'm happy for all the people who finished the first book going, but what happened to the characters? Like, where are they now? I don't need that. I like to just imagine that they're off living their best lives. I'm finding this beautiful writing still, super atmospheric, but it's so much more of a traditional apocalyptic story. It's just about survival. It's not about the onset. It's not about the initial fear. It's not about worrying and getting to know the characters. It's just all so established and they're surviving. So for me, it's just not very interesting. I don't feel super invested. Also, it's been a lot of years since I read the first one, so I don't feel as close to these characters as I once did. This picks up, I think, 13 years after the first book ended, and there have been some changes something that has happened within the group that has made them want to move into a different location. They're also, losing their supply of food being in one spot for a long time. So they're packing up and moving. And there are things that have happened within the group that it's recapping for us. There are things from the first book it's recapping. I think it's a good, solid book. I just don't need it. And so I don't feel the most invested in it. I have finished another book for the video. Excited to have done so, but I'm realizing, just like last year, I accidentally read so many heavy books, and there wasn't a breakup of silly, goofy, light stuff, and it was just heavy reading for like 3 weeks. And looking at the list that I have, there's only like one, I think, fun book I have on it, so I'm rethinking what I'm gonna do for the next category. But first, let me tell you, this is a 3.5. I always think the most interesting thing about an apocalyptic book is to see the perspective of the author and what they think the world could look like in collapse. And obviously from an Indigenous author, it's a completely different perspective because there's already been so much taken and stolen, and lives have already been so disrupted, and there's generations of trauma. So it's always just such a different take on things, and it's fascinating. The second half definitely picked up. The first half is quite slow, and then once there's an arrival somewhere and we reflect on a couple different storylines that are going on, there's a lot of exploring personal relationships and groups clashing, and who can trust who, and where everybody came from, and if they can connect in the way that they want, or they can support each other in the way that they want. And it was very good objectively. I definitely should have read this earlier, so thank you to my members for pushing me to finish it. And now I need to figure out what I'm reading today. I think what I'm trying to figure out is, like, do I want to read something fun already in the plans, or do I want to change what I'm reading in a category to make it fun? I do believe the only for sure light thing on this TBR that I've committed to right now is Dungeons and Drama. And I don't feel like reading a teen book today. So I think I'm gonna readjust what I'm doing for mystery thriller. What I'm doing for the mystery thriller category has to be a book already on my TBR. As far as my physical TBR, I have 3 options. Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley, which I read the first chapter of and it did not do anything for me. First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston, which my mom got from Book of the Month and then gave to me because she loved it and said that I would. And then All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker, which I picked from Book of the Month. I didn't commit in the original video to for sure reading All the Colors of the Dark, but I definitely leaned that way. And I'm rethinking it now because I want to read something silly. I want to read something light. Not that, like, these books are about mystery and crime and death, but more the opportunity to have a fun time. I think this is probably the least fun book if I look at the entire mystery thriller list. So while I really hope I don't regret it, I'm gonna go with one of these two. This was given to me by her. She lent it to me. I've held on to it for a couple months. I should probably give it back. She got it from Book of the Month. I guess I paid for it because I paid for her Book of the Month subscription. She gave it a 4.5. She said that the ending was really surprising and that she thought I would like it. And anytime anybody tells me that I'm gonna like a mystery thriller, I don't believe them. Because I don't think I've even established what I need from a mystery thriller. Like, yes, I say the 2 things. I want to be entertained and surprised, but there's also a list of 20 things that piss me off in a mystery thriller. Those other 2 things don't really matter if you're gonna piss me off. I'm on my way to a cabin weekend with some girlfriends, and my bag is packed. That's not supposed to be in there. My bag's packed and I have to pack books now, and I don't know what I want to choose. I think I'm gonna bring this one because I already talked about picking it for the nonfiction, and that's something that I can flip through and doesn't like require all of my attention. I don't want to read a fantasy. I don't want to read something incredibly heavy. This would have been a good time probably for a romantasy. I feel like the other girls will be bringing some romantasy books. I might also bring my thriller. This looks like an ambitious reading weekend. I'm not actually planning on reading them all. I just want to have options. This is why I shouldn't plan to vlog on this trip, because this is what I look like. We just went in the hot tub and I'm very hot, and then I made dinner. It was very good, and I haven't updated you at all on my read because I've just been reading throughout the day. Physically, a little bit audio, and then back to physically, and then I got a decent way through while I was making dinner. I said I have an hour left of the audiobook, so I'm gonna finish, I think that's the chapter I'm on, and I haven't told you anything about this book, so let me just tell you. It is about this woman. Her name is Evie, but like, is it? She has different identities. She basically, I wish I'd brought different thrillers, because once I read the first couple chapters and got an idea of what this was, I would have wanted to switch to something else, because I don't love stories following somebody who is like a spy. I don't love an espionage. I don't like a fake identity kind of thing, and that's my bad. She's given a name and a location by her mysterious boss, Mr. Smith. She has this mark named Ryan. That's the person she has to like investigate, like find out everything about. And then throughout their story, that's the present day chapters, and then it flashes to various other jobs she's done in the past and what happened during them, the people that she met, the people she had to take down, the way she almost got caught, the way she's gotten in trouble with her boss, and like various things. And I don't care about any of it. Now the stakes are very high, and obviously this job, something significant is gonna happen. I'm assuming there's like a big twist, a big reveal, and I hope that at least like does something for me, because right now I'm not entertained. I haven't been surprised, but if that happens, like this could be a 3 instead of a 2. So I'm crossing my fingers that it's a win and we're not all disappointed by the decision I made. This is a quick voiceover after the fact. I didn't properly review it in the moment. Upon reflection, I was just bored of this thriller. I didn't care about the woman's secret agent story. I tend to like a ridiculous plot twist, but not a consistently to suspend your disbelief sort of plot. Half the book was flashbacks, which should have built the intrigue for me. I understand it did for other people, but I just didn't think it was compelling. So many pages of her just rambling about stuff I didn't know I was meant to care about didn't work for me. So my 2-star review in the moment was apparently only summed up by 1 word: yawn. Next up, we're doing nonfiction. On nonfiction I've never heard of. Fun fact, actually really sad fact, I have only heard of 1 of these books from this entire list, and it's the one that I was desperate to read, and it's the only one that I cannot pick now. I'll still read it. I'm still interested in it for sure. But I flipped through the reproductive options. The blood one is very much a textbook. The one that was about hysteria was organized by different issues, and it's about like diagnosing them and understanding them. Ended up picking All in Her Head, which seems like the most engaging. It's organized by different organs, things that people have been misdiagnosed with, lies that have been told, and then the correct information that we currently have. I'm really crossing my fingers that this one has some intersectionality, that maybe we're not just talking about blanket women. Women have done this, women have experienced this, women witness this. There are moments that she can take, specifically about trans people, that we're talking about maybe Black women and medicine, because there's just a different experience. Obviously she can't share her personal experience with, but as a doctor, you'd think that she's going to include stuff. I thought it'd be a cute view to bring you outside while I'm at the cottage for the weekend. But I'm starting to think you might not be able to hear me out here. It's so windy being off the lake. So hopefully you can hear me, but maybe I shouldn't do this. Let me just tell you, I'm halfway through All in Her Head, and I like it. I'm happy to report it's what I expected it to be. It's what I hoped it to be, and I like how it's organized. I think I wish it went a little bit further with categorizing each chapter, because each one we're talking about a different thing in the human body. Like there was one on skin, there was one on the bladder, there's one on muscles, one on bones, and I think I wish it gave a history, and then in each one there is like an example of a person who got diagnosed with this wrongly, or who went to the hospital this many times and this is what happened to them. And it's a lot of people who our Dr. Author has met with herself and how she helped them with their cancer diagnosis. But then she delves into like the history of something, and then I wish there was just, it was a little more distinguished. And there was like a whole section in each one that was like, and how that impacts us today. Because it's sprinkled in amongst the paragraphs, but there's not a specific section in each one that goes, and this is why this was a problem in the past. This is how it's impacted people long term. wish it was divided up a little bit more within each chapter. Now with how windy it is, I'm not gonna tell you anymore. I was gonna give you specific passages that I've tabbed and I've liked, but I will do that when I'm inside. So my vlogging, obviously a little sporadic, chaotic over the weekend. 3 nights was the perfect amount of time to be gone, and coming back on a Monday is just so nice because I'm home and I still have a couple hours till Rob and Liam get home to just like unpack, to get all of my stuff situated. I really need to wash my hair. I slept in these last night, so like don't look too close at me. We got through so many Christmas movies, holiday movies, and not like the nice nostalgic ones you watch with your family every year. We watched all the stupid new Hallmark ones. All 5 of us went into the weekend having not watched any of the new ones. So I'll tell you my favorites. I don't remember what any of these are either. I just wrote down the titles. Best Christmas Ever was a 3 out of 5 for me. The Merry Gentleman one, I wanted to watch so bad. I did not like that. Maybe 1 or 2. Oh, Love the Coopers is one that wasn't a recent one. It was an older thing, and we just put it on for some reason, and it's like one of my favorite holiday movies, I think. Like, I really liked it. And then one with Vineyard in the title, whatever that one is. I did not like that one. The last one, Hot Frosty, that one was for me. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I thought the acting was actually decent, and like, it's stupid because she falls in love with a man who's actually a snowman, but I thought it was great. It's sad that the Lindsay Lohan new one doesn't come out until like next week, but then there's potential to make that my December movie night with my members. We went in the hot tub every night. On the last night it started snowing. It was really beautiful. We ate a lot of food, and then we were all cross-stitching and coloring and knitting. We just had a really nice time. It was really relaxing, and we were there enough time for me to finish 2 books, which was perfect for me. So I don't have it here because I gave it to one of my friends as I was reading it. Well, she was interested in it because of the cover, which I agree. And then she was like, tell me if it's good. And it was so good. And I was underlining and I was highlighting, and she took it home with her. So I actually reserved a copy from the library so I can hold it up for you in a future video, like my quarterly wrap up and end of year thing, if I don't get it back by the end of the year. I took pictures of some of my favorite passages, and I took some notes about things that I really liked. So, okay, I think my final rating is a 4.5. Taught me so much. It's from a very knowledgeable person, but it can't be a 5 because it wasn't like impressively written. It didn't do anything that was crazy that makes me go, oh my God, best book I've ever read, have to recommend it to everybody. So it's a 4.5. It was as inclusive as it needed to be. I don't think she went above and beyond in any way, but she mentioned gender affirming surgery and trans people in certain conversations. She mentioned the medical experimentation done on people who are imprisoned, and how certain things that have been learned throughout medicine have really detrimentally impacted certain communities. The skin section was talking about plastic surgery. It even went into labiaplasty, which is something that not enough people are talking about. A lot of like men in power positions in plastic surgery and the way that they abuse their power. In the bone section, it was talking about like the size of women and women's skeletons. And in the muscle section, she was talking a lot about even in like women are so in fear of bulking and getting bigger, and how the best thing a woman can be in her mind is to be small and take up as little space as possible. And even in cancer treatment, something that is so valuable is building muscle, but even women who are in late stages of cancer treatment fear bulking so much that they won't follow her advice. There was the blood, the breath section. It talked about tuberculosis. It talked about cigarettes, and how they were called like the torches of liberation, because women being able to smoke and making that decision for themselves, even as harmful as we know it to be, was a sign of liberation. The guts section got into diet and food, and a lot about Dr. Kellogg, who you might have heard, who invented cereal to stop people from masturbating. If you've ever heard that phrase out there on the internet, it's like a wild thing to say, but it's very true. To stop people from being aroused and to stop people from having sexual thoughts, and how he thought that constipation could lead to arousal. And so he wanted to make food that could make you not constipated. And then like the history of IBS being associated with an emotional brokenness, and how like there are so many things still out there that are misdiagnosed and misunderstood. There was a section about the bladder. There was one about nerves. It talked about lobotomies, the history of that. There was one about hormones. There was a lot just about fabricated medical studies and how things were believed for a certain period of time. I would definitely recommend it, and I'm glad I picked it. And now at some point today, I'm gonna start the Ricky Wilde romance that I brought but didn't actually start. I'm getting my hair done, and then I will update you on what the heck that love song book is even about. So you're in charge of the romance that I read. In the comments below, comment whatever romance title you want me to read. I will then search all of the titles in the comments and I will tally them up and figure out what it is. It's time to talk about romance. Now, I've already grabbed what I know I'm gonna be reading because I saw as the comments were rolling in, this has to be at least mentioned twice as much as the runner-up. This felt like all that I saw mentioned the very first day that this video was up. At this point, it has 1,300 comments. Wow, you guys were passionate about romance. I guess this was a good one to pick because it made you all engage with the video. So now I'm gonna search all of the titles because I am interested to know what else you voted for. So the loves, oh, almost 300. A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams was mentioned 294 times. I think the Cinnamon Bun Cafe is gonna be the next one. 180, that's a strong showing. I also know I saw Swift and Saddled a decent amount, 129. Can I keep getting them in order? I was surprised by the amount of, I think it was called Love in the Afterlife or something. Considering I'd never heard of it, I think people were commenting that it would be good for me because it's like magical. The Love of My Afterlife. That one got 95 mentions. How to End a Love Story would probably be my pick just because it's the one already on my TBR. 99. Just for the summer, I feel like a lot of you probably want me to read even though I don't want to. 74. So I was able to predict or presume all of the top contenders, but I'll put all of the final numbers, how many votes they got on the screen now. Ooh, the one with the very least, King of Sloth, got 2 mentions. Oh, and there were 11 of you preying on my downfall, mentioning Leather and Lark. So yes, I will be reading this one. I don't know anything about it. I am a rom-com girl. I love a romance that's silly and stupid and fun, and there's like great banter between the couple. The Tia Williams that I loved, that everybody loved, when it came out, I give it 4.5. It was in spite of it not being a rom-com. The combination of elements of that book is not something that I am seeking in a romance. So I am worried about this one. I feel like maybe Tia Williams and I just like we mesh really well, and I'll love this too, but I do fear that it's gonna be heavy and intense and like deeply romantic, which worries me. I want to know why people picked this for me. So I'm just gonna read the first couple comments I see. This person said, I haven't read A Love Song, but I'm voting for it because you deserve a pretty cover. This is my favorite cover of all the romance. No one is giving a single reason. I still don't know what it's about. In fact, most people are saying they haven't read it. Okay, this person said they've heard amazing things from friends who've read it. So that was their pick. This person said, A Love Song for Ricky Wilde is my vote. I've already read this 2 times this year. So swoon-worthy. Okay, so I'm still not any more well-informed than I was before. I feel like I've read this synopsis at some point, but it must have been over a year ago by now. I didn't put it on my TBR. Maybe because at the time I had decided that I was done with romance for a while, or I didn't know if I would click with it, but I'm worried. I'm worried that it's about fame because a love song sounds like it's somebody writing a love song for someone else, but I don't think that you all would push me in that direction. Ricky Wilde has many talents, but being a Wilde isn't one of them. As the impulsive artistic daughter, oh, I thought Ricky was the guy. Okay. As the impulsive artistic daughter of a powerful Atlanta dynasty, she's the opposite of her famous socialite sisters. Where they're long-stemmed roses, she's a dandelion, an adorable bloom that's actually a weed, born to float wherever the wind blows. In her bones, Ricky knows that somewhere a different, more exciting life awaits her. Just beneath the surface of her new neighborhood, the music, stories, and dazzling drama of the Harlem Renaissance still simmers. One evening in February, as the heady, curiously off-season scent of night-blooming jasmine fills the air. Descriptive. Ricky encounters a handsome, deeply mysterious stranger who knocks her world off balance in the most unexpected way. Set against the backdrop of contemporary Harlem and 1920s decadence. What? How is it set against the backdrop? But it's set current day, isn't it? Am I lost? A love song for Ricky Wilde is a modern day fairy tale of two passionate artists drawn to the magic and... Magic? Magic? Is he a time traveler? Or is it like magic? Emily Giffen said, prepare to be transported. She said it's enchanting. Emily Henry said it's a magical and warm world. Kennedy Ryan said heartache and history and magic. Are we being literal? Is this time travel? Oh my God, give me 100 pages, I'll be right back. Here's where I'm at, a little past halfway. I did read that first 100 pages and I just didn't feel anything, to be honest, to tell you about. It took them 100 pages to properly meet each other, tell each other their names, which is good because like I like a slow burn, and then the slow burn disappeared really quickly, and they've done some stuff, and I want to care and I want to feel invested, but I just don't. It started out heavy. It is historical in a sense. I don't really like these characters. I like them independently. I like the things that they're dealing with, or exploring how they're dealing with their life's experiences. When they come together, the way they talk to each other, like the romantic stuff, I don't feel anything towards them, and it just feels weird actually. The dynamic really changes. Like the writing style almost kind of changes when they're interacting. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna play Dress to Impress because I'm kind of bored. So I'm like playing a game instead of reading my book. Let me start with this discussion saying that you made the right choice. This was the absolute right decision for you to vote for. Good job. You did a good thing. The way that this plays with time, the fact that it's from an author that I've enjoyed, the fact that it has a cover that I love, having a faded element, all of these things are reasons I should like this. Anything else on the list, I could have easily given a 1 star by the end. This was never going to be a 1 star. However, it is a 3. There were sections of it I liked. I would say actually specific chapters. I remember chapter 15 being really good, so a little over halfway, when we get an explanation of what's going down. I appreciated that. The couple chapters before the final couple chapters was very good. Ricky and Ezra are dealing with life and death, with what their future is going to look like, how their love story is going to end or continue. And there's another person heavily involved in that. And there are beautiful descriptions about life and death there. Unfortunately, most of the rest of it, I just felt okay about. I didn't really feel a connection between these two characters. I found the sex scenes really abruptly placed. There was a scene, this isn't a flaw, but like jarring. There was a scene where she was like, getting it on with a piano, which if for nothing else, well preps me for the airplane porn I'm gonna read next year. The last couple chapters of this were especially weak. I found them laughably cheesy. What the author wanted to pull off and wanted to do, I found it, I don't know, predictable, a little bit silly. I think that this is a great book to exist, this type of story, this type of tone, but there were a lot of like cheesy kind of montage scenes that felt like a 90s chick flick. There was one where they were like running around trying out different sidekicks and it was meant to be fun, but I just found it kind of uninspired. The fact that this is about a legacy and this family, we didn't really get much about the family and the legacy, and there were these really strong characterizations of the sisters and they were just barely in the book. And I think it could have been so much more interesting if we followed everyone in the family. And at the end of the day, I just don't feel like I earned this romance. The buildup of it and the pace of it didn't work for me. It was kind of uneven with exploring Ezra's past as well, the moments it would come up and the moments that it didn't, when there could have been conversations about what he's been through. It just left me feeling a little bit unsatisfied. This is the rating I have given most all romance that I've read this year, so it's not really a surprise. And that's all of my thoughts on A Love Song for Ricky Wilde. I appreciate you guys choosing it. My mom is choosing my fantasy read? My mom? I am about to take my dad grocery shopping, and I thought while I'm gone, I will leave my mom with the list of Goodreads nominees in the fantasy category. And when we get back, she can tell me which of the synopses intrigued her. Some of you have mothers who would probably be like, oh, I'm choosing your fantasy read. Tell me which one, just tell me which one you want me to pick. Sweetie, I support you. I'll pick whatever you want. That's not my mom. I don't think my mom's gonna give a shit which one's on my TBR, which one I want her to pick. She might even pick the one she most would want to read, but I'll find out her thought process when I get back. Okay, I gave my mom the list. She's been perusing. I think she's putting her whole thought into it. I don't know. But I'm not gonna make her be on camera. She is not feeling well right now. But I do think she has texted me her choice. I have a feeling maybe she'll give me 2 options. Unless she's just texting me asking like a clarifying question. I didn't want to open the text in case it was the book. So what do I think she's gonna choose? Yeah, actually, let's guess first. I know she will recognize the name T. Kingfisher, either from something, I feel like I've given her something to read, but I know, well, maybe she will know that I've read from T. Kingfisher before. I do fear she'll pick like the Veronica Roth because maybe she's heard of that author, or Lev Grossman because maybe she's heard of that author. She might pick A Sweet Sting of Salt because it's like queer and horror fantasy, which she might know that I'm into. And also An Academy for Liars. Like, does she pay attention to my book club enough to know that I'm already, but if I'm already reading it, she's probably gonna go, well, she's already reading it, I might as well pick something else. I think she's gonna pick The Book of Doors, The Dead Cattail Assassins, because I think that's the one that will interest her. Maybe The Foxwife. I think my number one guess is The Sorceress Comes to Call. I don't know why, I just feel that one. Let's see. She picked An Academy for Liars. Did you know that was my book club pick of the month? Or is this just kismet? Guess she doesn't follow me on Instagram. I guess she probably doesn't even know I've read that author twice before. Ooh, my mom really came in clutch. Let's see her reasoning. Dark academia, murder mystery, quirky characters. Oh my God. She's the best. I have to read that anyway within like the next 10 days because I have a live show. Let's get into it. Oh my God, I hope I love it. If I give this one a 4.5 or a 5, I get to officially call Alexis Henderson one of my all-time favorite authors. And there's only a couple of them. In here we have a character named Lennon, and she is kind of like invited, forced. She's manipulated kind of into going to this interview series of examinations to get into this prestigious school. And I'm still wondering if at this point, if the other people taking the exam and going through the same steps as her, if they knew about it beforehand, if everybody's always known about this Drayton University and they've been vying for a position there, or if they're all as lost and just thrown into it as she is. Things kick off at her engagement party, where the engagement essentially ends before the night is over. Then she pretty swiftly is taken to this school, and she herself has to figure out if she has these powers of compulsion herself and if she belongs at this school. I definitely feel like this is going to be more fantasy than horror as it's designated, but there have been some ominous phrasing and scenes where she's bleeding when things are going on. One of the quotes that I've really liked is, "They were the kind of people who mistook greatness for its shadow. As long as they were in the presence of brilliance, they too were brilliant by proxy." Just to give a sense of the group of people that she's spending her time with before she goes to the school. And now, I don't know, is this gonna be like a dark, difficult place, or is she going to, obviously it's gonna have hardships, she's gonna learn like secrets, but is she also going to make friends, romantic connections? I don't really know what the vibe of it's gonna be, but my live show is in a couple days, so I need to really run through this. I promise you, I have not just been sitting in this corner for the last week. Like I do move around, I go other places, I swear. I don't really have anything to say about this, but I am halfway through, and I thought I should, it's my marker, highlighter. I should probably just give you my feelings, try to come up with something. I don't know that I'm liking it. There was a part that was really interesting to me when there was like an initiation ritual, and I really liked that scene, the way it started out. I think mostly because I was worried that when they got to the school, it was gonna start to be like a little too magical school. Like they were gonna have like a ceremony where they all get placed into their different sections. But what happened in that scene, rather, they have a little competition amongst each other, and it started out so well, and then I got so confused. And I was like, what actually was the point of that? And how it made me realize I don't really understand how this school functions, and not in like a fun fever dream kind of way where like things are just weird. It's like Alexis Henderson has everything in her mind and then had to cut out certain parts of the book maybe to make it quicker moving, because I don't really get like, I keep getting confused who's a student and who's a teacher, and they're having all of these like conversations around things where it feels like you're talking to a teacher, the way that they're behaving, the way that they're making decisions, but then I'm like, no wait, that's a student. And then something bad happened, and I don't understand how she and this like teacher, mentor, whatever, advisor went off and did this thing to begin with. Like, I don't understand why. I don't get how that happened, why there wasn't other students there. Like, I don't really get it. She is special compared to some other people. So I guess she's having certain other opportunities, and it's about, this book is about her learning what she's capable of. But then something bad happened, and one of the people was like, oh my gosh, go and tell this person, you have to tell them what happened, because they've grown so close, these two people. And then I realized like that the person she was going to tell was a student, but it felt like it was a teacher. The dynamics are just very strange. And it made me realize at that point that I don't get what the teachers or advisors are aware of or aren't aware of, and who is even like in power, like who makes decisions within their groups of people, because other students are making other students do things. I think the hierarchy is just having me very lost. You know what? If nothing else, my review of this book will support the argument that this video was just as good an idea as if I had selected all of the books for myself for all of the categories, because this is what I would have picked for myself in fantasy. So regardless of who's selecting it, who's in charge, I was still set up to not like a book. And that hurts. It hurts me. As a dark academia fan, as an Alexis Henderson fangirl, this being a high rating was going to solidify her as an all-time favorite author. Instead, I'm giving it a 2, and now I have to do a live show and tell everybody for like an hour why it's a 2. I just felt myself asking why over and over again, and at the end I still don't have the answers. Like, why was Lennon behaving this way? Why were her decisions what they were? I don't understand them as a reader. Why was the world building so lacking? Why do I still not get a grasp for why everyone is so desperate to go to this school? Why on earth were Dante and Lennon interested in each other? Zero chemistry. I didn't see it. I didn't understand it even an iota. Why is this a standalone book, not a series? Why did so much happen in one novel? Her other books that I've loved so much have such a limited cast. They're a limited scope. It's just set in a house or set in a small community. And this is so ambitious. It's not just a school, it impacts the entire world. Like, everything that happens here has a larger implication, and you just can't pull off this entire arc in this many pages while also giving me clear answers to how everything functions, and also well develop all of the characters, and for me to have an understanding of who they are and what they want their future to be after graduating, while I'm also supposed to be rooting for this like forbidden romance because it's a student and her advisor. The way that one of the people in the couple is putting up very clear barriers and the other person just like doesn't really care, and the fact that it is still supposed to be a romance, I don't care for that. I don't think it was like a cutesy hee forbidden romance. It was like a firm boundary forbidden romance that should have been forbidden. Like, they have no reason to want to be together. I don't like them as people. I don't like them together. The 2 and not a 1 is because Alexis Henderson writes beautifully. Her prose is stunning, and it was wasted on this rushed storyline. I was gonna read a whole nother book tonight, but I'm just like in kind of a bad mood now, so I'm gonna see you tomorrow. Young adult fiction by Rob or Liam, whoever wants to be in the vlog.
Thirsty for sure. The reappearance of Rachel Price, Betting on You, Dungeons and Drama, and A Crane Among Wolves.
Which one would you want me to read?
None.
Which one would you read?
None. I don't know. The last one, I guess.
Okay. Any reason why?
No.
So unfortunately, I just look like a hater because the book that you guys chose, I didn't absolutely love. The book my mom chose, I didn't absolutely love. But I definitely trust my husband and child. Just kidding. I have no idea how this is going to go. Also, they weren't picking it with any intent behind it. It was just like, this sounded the nerdiest. And I think that is why they gravitated towards it. Something I'm already liking about this, Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce, is if this was written like 10 years ago or when I was in high school, the idea of a love interest playing Dungeons and Dragons and the main character just like getting into that world, joining in on the game because she has to work for her dad's board game store, it would be like the nerdy outcast guy, right? That nobody likes. He has no friends. He just like hangs out with these guys, and it would be so embarrassing for her to ever be interested in him. But in this day and age, every person has a group, every person, every hobby. Things just aren't embarrassing the way that they used to be. I don't think people get bullied the same way in real life for their interests, and especially like gaming in general is just such a thing. So that's an element that I'm already liking. It's not like she's a popular girl and he's a nerd. She has her own interest in musical theater and he has his own interest in board games, role-playing games, etc. She starts out the book working at this store because her parents are divorced, and this is kind of punishment for her to have to work at this store because she did something bad. Her mom, I don't know, it's kicking off with her being like, oh, my mom's my best friend. My dad left the family because he wanted to start this board game store and that's all that mattered to him, and he chose it over us. 75 pages in, oh, side note, I'm doing live reading sprints right now with my channel members for 10 hours. I will be here celebrating my 10 years on BookTube. At this point, I'm getting the feeling that this book is going to be about her coming to the conclusion or understanding that it's not her dad's fault what happened. Not that it's solely her mother's fault, but I think just a more understanding of what actually went down, because from my perspective, it seems like her mom wasn't very supportive of her dad changing careers and wanting to go with his passions, because her mom is also not very supportive of her. She says she's too obsessed with musical theater and is taking over her life and she needs to find other things to care about. And I think she's kind of projecting what happened with her husband onto her daughter. And I'm guessing that's going to be like the goal of it, is for her to figure all that out and spend time with her parents equally and understand them better. But also she's dating, well, she's fake dating. It's fake dating. My family chose a fake dating book for me, and none of us knew that that's what it was. She just broke up with somebody, and he comes into the store, and he's like trying to make her jealous because he has another girl with her, and so she pretends to be dating this guy who works there. It's also like hate to love, I think, because they don't get along. And he has a crush on a girl who comes into the store, one of the only girls who comes and plays Dungeons and Dragons. And she's like, oh, well, I can make her definitely like you more because she seems really jealous when I'm around. And so they both have a reason to be doing this. And it's fun. It says it's like a rom-com somewhere. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. The vibes are good. I don't relate to either of these people. I'm not like a musical girl, and I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons person. My husband used to play, I think, he used to call it poker night. He would say, I'm going to poker night with the guys. I don't think they were actually playing poker. I made it through my 10-hour live show. I had so much fun. We played so many games, Codenames and Dress to Impress, I did a trivia of like 10 years of my channel and things that people test you to see if you remembered. And I finished this entire book, and then I started this, but that's unrelated. That's just for me. I thought I was going to get to read it for the romantasy category. I still don't know what I'm reading for the romantasy category, and I'm probably going to go book shopping this weekend because there are sales going on and we're going to do some holiday shopping. So maybe I'll figure that out right now, but you might not see it for a couple more clips. But Dungeons and Drama is, I'm going to give it a 4. I think maybe more like a 3.75 to be stupid specific. It reminded me most of reading, where is it? Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I feel like it had a similar vibe to it. So if you loved that one, maybe you like the dynamic of these people. It kind of weirdly felt like it would make a good holiday read. I guess for me, it did make a good holiday read because we're in the holiday season. So if you look at it and you think it's too cutesy and it's like summery, there's some kind of quality, maybe because it's about her having to save her musical and it's about this like small town and making sure the success of the board game store is good. It just reminds me of those Hallmark Christmas movies, the small town ones where there's a business failing or somebody's trying to like make a production. I think I just watched Merry Gentlemen too recently, maybe. It made me feel how I felt like reading this type of story, this age range, 5 years ago, and talking about why I prefer it to adult romances, because the stakes are so low. They don't have to worry about their careers melding or the children they want to have or planning for a marriage or long-term relationship. It's just a high school romance. And it's like, oh, I just touched his hand. Should I not touch his hand? Oh, I saw somebody across the thing who was looking at us. Is our fake dating getting too real? Like, are we faking it for everyone? Is it starting to feel too real between the two of us? Like, it was just soft. It did start to go in a direction that felt like a little more intense. Like somebody ended up in the hospital at one point, but it didn't get super dramatic. There was definitely some conflict involved, and it was about her journey of understanding herself better, her parents' situations, getting closer to her dad, kind of everything I expected, and I'm glad that it was picked for me. That one about matching my outfit sounds really fun, because then while I'm live, I can see the covers for the first time in the category that pops up. It's gonna have to be like a green cover with yellow flowers. Can I find something that specific? I just wore this because I wanted to match the Goodreads Choice Awards aesthetic. Oh my gosh. Okay, the one to match my outfit is going to be the debut novel, Shred Sisters by Betsy Lerner. That's an interesting cover. Green, yellow, Sky Full of Elephants. Also green, yellow. I have been on a journey with this book, and I don't even know like how to sum up what's going on. I'm 80% of the way through it. And I refuse to finish it until I have the physical copy. I've been listening to the audiobook because I can't buy so many freaking books for this video. And so this is one that I was like, I'll just listen to the audiobook. I'll see if I like it. And I got 50% of the way through, and I was like, okay, I'm reading it. It's fine. I don't need to own this, because my bookshelf at the end of the year is only going to have 4 and 5 stars on it, and anything else under it, and I'm going to donate. I'm like, I'm not going to buy a book that I'm gonna have to donate in a couple weeks or sell or whatever I'm doing with it. But now I'm loving this book, like loving it. And I can't figure out, can I still give this a 5 when I didn't like the first half of it? Like, I don't know what's going on. So these high concept books, futuristic ideas of like, what are things I've read before? Like, what if we lived in a world where women had the power instead of the men? What if we lived in a world where your prison sentence was decided by a fight to the death? They're always so interesting, even if I don't end up loving them, because you're just visiting like usually a small, tight-knit group of people and what they're going through. Meanwhile, this like huge global impact is going on, but you're just in this small little area. Chain Gang All-Stars is not a very good example, because that is like it's not a real world thing. I can't think of any other ones, but I know that I've read them where like something big and global is different, like in a dystopian sense. So in this one day, all of the white people die in the world. And we're following a man who is, because of that, no longer in prison. And he is reconnecting with a daughter of his who he hasn't seen since he went into prison. And he is Black, his daughter is mixed race, and she grew up with her white family, and her white family is now gone. And they are reconnecting and finding like a safe place. And she has a lot of feelings about him, the fact that he hasn't been in her life, and the fact that he's Black. She has certain thoughts because of how she was raised, about how to feel about him, how to feel about her own identity. And so a lot of the opening of the book was them like kind of traveling, and I don't like a road trip story, and it was about them finding a community. And there's oftentimes when people are starting to build a community and it's just all about like the political dynamics of it and gathering and figuring stuff out, that for some reason I don't love. Getting to know all of these people and how they're gonna relate, and I was just kind of along for the ride. In fact, I might have like kind of zoned out even while I was listening to the audiobook, because I wasn't super interested. And then it was actually 70% of the way through the audiobook that explained what happened. And I wasn't expecting that, because in a lot of situations when it's just this, you know, thing, it's an alternate reality. It's like things are just different. You don't get a reason, and we got a reason. And I suddenly was really invested, and I went back and I rewound the audiobook a good couple chapters, and I started listening again. And at that point in the book, I don't know if the writing is changing or just the topics are changing or perspective. I don't know. We're following two different people, and I was much preferring Charlie's sections. When we were hearing from him, the male audiobook narrator, I was listening. And then Sydney's chapters, I was struggling with just everything about them. And then I wrote down, like, chapter 31 was one of my favorite chapters of like a book. There was something about the writing style that just like shifted. And for the last chunk of this book, I have been so in love with it, and the way that it's written, not just the things that it's saying, but the way that Sibo Campbell is navigating this future situation is just so interesting. I also wrote down chapter 34. There's somebody reading a letter, and it was just so beautiful. I don't know, there was just something about it that was so good. And now I just want the physical book, and I'm so reluctant to listen to the last couple chapters. This was 8 hours ago when I paused it, and I want to get back to it so bad, but I want the physical book. I have to read the physical book. I want to be able to highlight things before I forget the things that I like. I want to look at the pages. I feel like it's gonna ruin my life at the end. And now I don't know what to do. I don't have a vehicle here to go run and get the book. And I don't know, my husband's out. Should I tell him to bring the book home for me? I just need the book. Star for the video. I'm so glad I got to read some of it physically. I am definitely gonna reread this. I'll definitely appreciate the first half and the build up more, knowing like what we're doing, especially because like did I read the synopsis of this at all? I think I read the first like paragraph. I don't even know how to sum this up. It's a story of, I don't know if I made it sound like it was this story of a father and daughter. They're not together for good portions of the book. They're grappling with their feelings about each other, and there are realizations for them to come to. And there is plenty of plot because Charlie is trying to make a really important decision, especially in this. He's constantly making important decisions. There's just the first half of this book and the second half of this book where the decision is there's a global impact behind it. And I loved that, but it still felt so intimate and small scale. It's about this collective consciousness. It's about generational trauma. And it's about like the responsibility that people feel to support, protect each other, but also like come to understand and respect themselves. And it's like the idea of being told what you are and having a life designed for you. And once your oppressors are gone, what does that leave you with? Who are you? What is your identity? And now you have this beautiful community to build with nothing pushing you down in the same way. Who are you gonna be? What do you want your legacy to be, and what defines you? And there's so many people who are experiencing the same thing, but we're just through the lenses of these two. And it was so beautiful. You know how I feel about repetition, and It was so perfectly utilized in here. This being a debut is so excellent. I always think of Glory by Violet Bulawayo and the use of repetition in that. This made me feel like that at times. There was just a couple moments where lines were repeated, or throughout a chapter the same phrase would be repeated, but it would mean a different thing each time. I don't know how more to describe this to you. I don't think this is going to be for everyone because it's such a character-driven novel. There's a plot, but it's not an action book. And I just love that the sci-fi category is like this. There's stuff that is so large scope and small scope and cozy and wild. There was some technology and explanations, and I found myself going, that doesn't really make sense because this would, but in the mystical universe stuff doesn't need to make any sense. Oh, that was so good. I need to find a good way to like summarize it so I can talk about it again in my wrap up, in my quarterly wrap up. Is that in my favorite books of the year? I feel like maybe it is. Oh, I thought maybe I had run, it's been a month since I've had a 5-star. I thought I was all out of them. If I were choosing from the debut category, would I have landed on that? Probably not. So thank goodness for this video. With memoir, read first line of all 20. Is what I put there. So I have to read the first line of 20 memoirs. I had only heard of 8 of the 20 memoirs before yesterday, so there was definitely a bias at play if I was just picking one for myself. So I had a channel bestie find the first line of all 20 of them on like Google, because you can get a sample of the first chapter on Google, and they were sent to me with no other context, so I can pick completely unbiasedly. Hopefully they're short and I can read them to you quickly. The first one is, I felt my father could change the weather, which makes me think it's probably this one, because that one I know is about a father. This one's longer. My mother was the only child of a cattle rancher. Oh, that's it. Never mind. There's more, but there was a period there. Don't actually think any of them I know are about a mother specifically, but I guess if it's a memoir, it's about you. So your mother and father are gonna come into it. Next is, there has to be something more fun than this, I said to myself, probably for the millionth time, as I sat at my desk drafting nuclear energy policy at the White House. I'm not interested in that one. Next is, you will surely forgive me if I begin this brief time we have together by talking about our enemies. I like that. I actually think I know what that one is because the font is similar to the font on the cover of the Hanif of Durakib, and it's like about a game. Next is, in the photo Andrew had texted, the little brick house looked out of another time. That doesn't do anything for me. The first time I see Curtis, I do not know who he is. Okay, that doesn't give me anything. Next is, all burglaries are alike, but every burglary is uninsured in its own way. That one does intrigue me. I'll put that in my top 5. At 11:15 on August 12th, 2022, on a sunny Friday morning in upstate New York, I was attacked and almost killed by a young man with a knife. And the chapter title is called Knife, and I think the book is called Knife. It still feels like summer when I arrive in Atlanta late in September, that stifling humidity just starting to give way to the first hint of fall. That one's fine. Oh, the year blank in the town of blank. I didn't want to have an ugly story, and for a long time I thought I wouldn't have to if I simply never told it. That's intriguing. I wonder why it's blacked out. Is that because it would be the title of the book? That doesn't make sense because I got Knife. This must be, actually it looks kind of like it's typewritten, like maybe it's an article that we're reading before the book starts. Next is, signs along the road, which was cracked and littered with potholes from previous rains, told us and anyone who cared to look that we were close to the Relodo River. I know there's a memoir about a river. I mean, this is now a guessing game. It's not which I'm most interested in. In September 1995, right at the tail end of Virgo season, my parents' dreams came true, and the prophecy of all the world's worst men came to pass. I was born. Okay, I also know based on the chapter title that this is Loud, which I definitely think other people will be into. I love her TikToks. I just don't know if that's something that I really need to read. This one says, Vengeance. Everyone knows the tragedy of the dead, but let's talk about the tragedy of the living. It all began the first day of solo performance class with the task to tell a 5-minute story. That's intriguing. It sets me up for a story that's to come. I'm putting that in my top 5. The only thing that matters is winning. 2 days after the 2020 election, House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy told me he had talked to Donald Trump. I'm gonna skip that one. This one, I'm waiting outside the school pickup line sandwiched between Drew Barrymore and a cousin of George W. Bush. Oh, that was just one. Sorry, that was it. That was the first line. Yeah, no, I don't want to read I don't think I want to read that. This one, coming of age. I had often asked Dick what he was like as a young man. To such questions, he would invariably roll his eyes and shrug. Again, fame looking ones, not probably for me. Whenever I ask my mother if she remembers the time in 2nd grade when I stabbed a kid in the head with a pencil, her answer is the same. Vaguely. I like that one too. This one is 1,384 and a half miles. No. My mother, Emma Johnson, and my brother Clyde were already a lockstep duo by the time I showed up on the scene. I think that's a fine intro to a memoir, but it doesn't do anything for me. And I think finally, looking back, it still fascinates me how a single, seemingly ordinary phone call changed my life. That chapter heading is the same font as the cover of Kelly Bishop's memoir. So I'm assuming that's that one. Okay, none of these were like super incredible to me. I don't want to say objectively because we all have different tastes, but I feel like other people would agree that the one about my enemies sounds the most intriguing. That one and the one about the 5-minute story, I think I would put top of the list. So I want to find out what these are. I'm selecting this one, and I think it's the Hanif of Durakib. Now let me check the other folder to see what everything is. Oh, the one about nuclear war was Ina Garten, which I remember people talking about that she had like a job you wouldn't expect if you don't know anything about her. The one about the 5-minute story was the manicurist's daughter. I'm interested in that one. Oh, this one is I shouldn't be telling you this, which makes sense because it's like things that are blacked out. And the one that I thought was Hanif of Durakib, it is. I have read his other 2 essay collections and loved them. So I'm excited that this is officially the one on my TBR. I come to you having finished the book that I was reading for this selection for this portion of the video. Oh my God. It's been a week, okay? It's been a week. I fear this video is not as fun and peppy as normal. Just know behind the scenes, real life stuff. It's been a week. And I'm not updating you till now because Liam is sick. Liam's been sick, just a little sick for a week. And now he's big sick. Like this is the 2nd sickest I've ever seen him. And so he was just lying with me on the couch all day, like literally 12 hours. We were just, well, he woke up at 4. We've been up since 4 and it's 7. So it's actually 15 hours that we just sat on this couch. And I finished my book and he slept and cried and my mind is just elsewhere. And now I'm like, I keep thinking, like, am I about to get big sick? Because I can't afford that right now. I mean, nor can anyone, and also ever. But I'm thinking like over the next couple days, should I just like try to go get everything done for Christmas and like pre-film a bunch of videos just in case I'm down for the count next week. So I didn't like it as much as, let me grab some visuals. These 2. This is my all-time favorite. This was a 4-star, and I'm also giving this a 4. It did not make me care about basketball, which is fine. Like that's not the point of this. All of his work is a mix of memoir and just musings about the world and cultural criticism, a lot talking about media. I love his writing. I love what he's doing. The way that I cared about a lot of the stuff that he was talking about, or I was aware of all the stuff that he was talking about in here, made it an extra special experience. If I cared about basketball or just like most sports in general, I think I would care more. I would glean more. Basketball is not the point of this. It's not all about basketball, but basketball is kind of a metaphor for everything, and everything is a metaphor for basketball. It is a book about identity and community, how people come together and watch sports, and you pick a team or you pick a person and you focus on them and you critique them and they feel like a member of your family. And in at the same time, like there's the neighborhood kid who literally it could be a part of your family, and you watch them rise to potential fame. And it's just such an interesting experience seeing someone local succeed or not succeed. There was a lot about his personal life growing up, little anecdotes, the first time he went to jail, a story about his father and how his father, never had touched a basketball in front of him, but was adamant that they have a basketball hoop. It was about his grandma playing the lottery, and there was this quote about there's the dreaming that happens in the in-between moments of wanting and obtaining something. I thought that was really beautiful. There, I highlighted quite a bit in here. I actually think the writing got better as the book went on. There was one passage, he always brings back ideas, like he'll start something at the beginning and it won't feel like it's going to come back, and then it does. There was a section about childhood innocence that I only actually have like a minute left on my battery. That was really great. When it did talk about media, that's when I'm on board. He's talking about an anecdote about like Marvin Gaye, Mobb Deep, White Men Can't Jump. I love the criticism, the critiques, just the mentions of things. And then when it gets into all the basketball stuff, the LeBron of it all, and all of the other basketball players who I have no idea who they are or what they've done, that's where I lose a little bit of interest. But I also recognize like this is important to him. It doesn't need to appeal to me. Like this is a great piece of work. I absolutely recommend it. It's what I would have picked on my own. I'm glad that it was appealing from the beginning. Oh, and the whole idea of our enemies, that was something that was frequently explored, and I really like that. Glad I picked it, glad I read it. Moving on to something else. The last one is horror. Oh, read the first chapter. Hey, that's so fun. That's like nostalgic because when I used to do the thriller, mystery, and horror categories, I used to read the first chapter of like all of them to kind of get a gauge, and I would share that. I was meant to read the first chapter of 10 of these, but I actually ended up doing all 20. So What Feasts at Night, I gave a 4 out of 10. I read the first book in this series and I don't really care to read the next. It had great descriptions, recapped the last book briefly. First chapter had the main character who had just had time away and was now back in Galatia, and their caregiver is missing. House of Bone and Rain, I'm just not sure this author is for me. I gave it a 4 out of 10. It had a lot of violence in the first chapter and that's just not what I want to be reading right now. Murder Road, I gave a 7 out of 10, but I know that everybody hates this one, so I do feel like my bias is leading me to not read it even though it was a 7. There was a couple who just got married. We learn a lot about their jobs and their backstory. They're on this drive and they come across a girl on the side of the road. She's injured. At the end of the chapter, it implies that she was maybe targeting them. Bury Your Gaze, I wanted to like so much more than I did. Something set in the Hollywood backlot is never really gonna be for me. It's following a screenwriter. He comes to this studio. He's been nominated for an Oscar. In this moment, the studio wants to kill off his gay characters. I think there's gonna be great intent here, interesting things. There was a death at the end of the chapter that had some intrigue, but I gave it a 3 out of 10. This Cursed House, I'm sure if I read on, the horrors would obviously come into it. The first chapter, it's following a Black woman in the 60s, hired on as a tutor. She arrives in this new city and she's encountering people who are warning her about the family that's hired her on. I definitely plan to read this one day, but right now it's a 7 out of 10. So Thirsty, I gave a 7 out of 10. I'm sure I'm a little bit biased because I haven't liked most of Rachel Harrison's stuff. This one, this woman wakes up and she gets a gift from her partner and it's a weekend getaway with one of her friends. You Like It Darker, I read the first half of the first story and it just comes down to the fact that I was not really in the mood to read a short story collection at this time, so I'm gonna pass on this one. I don't even know what I would rank it. Let's give it a 5. My takeaway from that experience is that I don't want any of them. Not that I would never read any of them, but not one of them had a first chapter that really like captured my attention that I absolutely have to read right now. So I guess I'm headed home and I'll read the ones that I have, and then I'll check out some sample versions of the couple that I don't have, physical or audio wise. Hopefully a decision will be made easily for me because that was kind of a wash. So that's 8 books down, and then I have 4 physically and 2 that I'm gonna have to grab a sample online of. Here I have Sleep Tight, The Bog Wife, A Sunny Place for Shady People, and then Indian Burial Ground was available at the library. So let's get through these ones. Sleep Tight, I'm giving a 7. I ordered this in Book of the Month a while ago. I didn't really remember what it was about. There were a bunch of different storylines I felt like going on all at the same time. There's 3 different things to be reading. There was this little before italicized section that was very short. And then there was a newspaper article about a missing teen. And then the first chapter was like 5 pages. We're following this woman who is a detective. She has a young child and she's getting divorced. And she was talking about her dad getting retribution for a crime. Like somebody's been in prison and they got the death sentence. And so that's going to happen. I'm guessing his story is what we were flashing back to, or that was a mystery that she was a detective on. I don't know. I didn't really feel very invested, but it was written well, so 7. I only read the first half of the first story of A Sunny Place for Shady People. I'm excited to read this collection, but the first story didn't really intrigue me all that much. It was following a woman whose mother is dead. She was referring to her as a ghost, and then she was talking about just like her neighborhood and people who've gone missing. These girls in Argentina in her neighborhood were crossing the street and something happened to them. I know that this is probably a great collection, but if I want to read like horror, I don't think this is what I'm looking for. Indian Burial Ground by Nick Medina, I'm interested in reading someday. It's a loose spin-off of Sisters of the Lost Nation, which I read for the book club. And we're following Noemi, as well as some other people, but basically the prologue and the first chapter told the same story but from different perspectives. We have this woman who was going for a drive and she almost hit this man, and he flew into, or she did hit him? He ended up like impaled on a telephone pole and died. And then the first chapter was from a person who knew him, and it's somebody coming to her door and explaining how this guy died and how this woman who was driving this Jeep is responsible. There was a coyote there covered in blood. Maybe that's really how he died. The premise is interesting. The first chapter like set things up, but I don't know, 6 out of 10? I went into this assuming that the Bog Wife would be the top contender. So I left it till last, worried that it wasn't going to be very highly rated. So let me tell you about the couple digital things I checked out first. My Darling Dreadful thing, I gave a 6 out of 10. It was about a seance. There was a spirit that goes to her family and she fakes she does have a spirit involved in her, like she's partially possessed, the main character, but she like plays it up for people who come to the house and want to speak to like dead people. Question is she mad? Is she a fraud? Is she possessed? I thought it was fine. A 6. Blood Like Mine was a mother and daughter. They ended up like slightly in a ditch after seeing swerving around an elk on the road, and this man pulls over to help them, and she makes her daughter hide in the back, and she's like talking about how worried she is that people are gonna see her. It was really stressful, but not a really intriguing story. And the Book of the Witching, I gave a 7 out of 10. It was 1 page, the first chapter. There was a park ranger who found a dead girl. She was wearing a Nirvana shirt and had tattoos of mermaids, and then they realized she wasn't actually dead. That's all it was. So nothing above a 7 happened for me. And this is barely above a 7, but because it's the one I'm most interested in, I know a lot of people have been enjoying this, and it was one of the best first chapters that I read. Maybe it's like a 7.5. This is what I'm going to go ahead and read, which isn't a surprise, by Kay Chronister, because this was almost a literally did book club pick at one point. Not that I remember what it's totally about, but in the first chapter, we were following this family. There was like 5, was it 4 or 5 siblings? And the father was dying, and he wanted all his kids there, and he was changing like the stuff with the will, and the family has a bog and they take care of a bog. They have one sibling that wasn't there, and they need to like make them come back to the family bog, I guess. And then we're following other characters' perspectives, which I think is going to be interesting. We do seem to follow all of them, but I'll do the first 100 pages and check back in with you. I big time lied to you. I am much further than 100 pages. In fact, I'm less than 100 pages from the end now. I have been waiting for this book to really hook me, for me to want to share something with you, and it just hasn't happened yet. So before I finish it, I'm gonna tell you the vibes. I like them. I like the atmosphere. I love a folk horror where we're getting so much description and it's like swampy and boggy. That's about all I'm liking. I think the concept of this is interesting, that there's this family legacy where a woman comes out of the bog for each like generation, and because there has been death, the next generation is looking for his bog wife. So we have this guy who's like hunting around the bog trying to find his bog wife, fulfilling the ritual, and then she doesn't appear. So now everyone in the family, all the siblings, are kind of panicking with who's gonna fulfill the legacy, who's gonna have a child, how do we find this bog wife, what do we have to do? And it sounds interesting. It's not really. These characters aren't really standing out to me. They're not super vivid. I don't think we need everyone's perspective. I think we could have just had one, probably. It's so much more in the real world, I think, than I was expecting. I thought it'd be more isolated and more about what these people are doing in the dirt. But we have this guy who, he's like going to a doctor. There's like a lot of stuff about his ability to reproduce. And he's like, because he got crushed by a tree. And he's like, can I have children? You can look at my balls. We have one character who's going into town kind of for the first time and stepping outside of her family unit. And those scenes are very strange. One of the siblings also just came back for the burial and like wants to leave as quickly as possible, but there's something keeping them all together. And it's also about them like finding out the truth about the bog, I'm guessing, and what's really going down, and their family history. I'm guessing there's going to be some type of twist because it's so intimate and atmospheric, but people like it so much. I think there's going to be something that we're going to come to understand that's different than what we already understand. Obviously, there are so many different types of horror, and it is gothic and it is folk, but I think I was expecting, especially from the cover, some more body horror, some more nature, like magic, fucked up stuff. But it's more just about this group of people and them figuring out stuff together. So let me wrap it up. I'll tell you my rating. Indeed, there was an interesting reveal. It's not gonna make the book more than 3 stars for me. And I also just don't really have that much to say. It is a little surprising that this is in the Goodreads Choice Awards. I just don't think it's anything particularly special. Oh, that's terrible. I'm just gonna have to read some reviews. I don't know like what people really got out of this. And if I had chosen it as a book club pick, I think I would have struggled for what conversations I wanted to have. I also don't think it's like particularly scary or unsettling for us or the characters, and it might not have lived up to the expectations that we might have had for it being a horror pick. As a novella lover, this would have made for a really fun novella, because then the reveal thing that happens could just happen sooner, because we didn't need all of the other scenes in between for it to have an impact. Because I remain that the concept is interesting. The writing is also good. Don't let me take that away from it. I'll pick up this author again. It was just simple. It was more straightforward than I was expecting as far as the actual plot and like what we were doing for the majority of the story. One thing that I love though is the books that I already had on my TBR that I was reading regardless that I would have picked for myself are sometimes, more often than not, the ones that are flops, and the ones that I didn't have on my radar or that I might not have read as quickly without this video are often going well. Let's do the shortest. Young adult fantasy. These are all so long. Almost all of them are over 400 pages. The short, what? This is the one that I would have picked if I was in charge. It's Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. For this being the shortest book on the list, it really isn't that short, and it's not much shorter than anything else. It comes in at 330 pages, which is pretty typical for a YA novel. It's another book that it took me, well, I'm halfway through it now, and I'm starting to like it now. So it took me the first half of the book to really get on board with what's happening. I feel like with this few pages, it didn't leave for much time to like get to know characters the way that I find typical, like paranormal YA horror used to be such a staple on my channel, and there's usually a lot of like getting to know the characters, getting to understand the relationship, or someone's new to school and there's time to establish something. We just got dropped into this already established, really intense friendship. So we have Andrew and his friend Thomas, kind of his only friend at their boarding school. They're both going through things. One of them, our main character, has a twin sister as well who goes to the school. And I think they are kind of constantly grappling with their relationship with each other. If the friend likes Andrew or the twin, or it's just like growing up with somebody that close in age and always being compared to somebody is obviously affecting your life and your standing and your friendships. And then going to this school where she is more popular, more liked, whatever, and you're being bullied. He's struggling with some things. And then Thomas is very quiet and kind of keeps to himself, seems to have terrible parents. Then at the beginning of the book, I'm seeing how it's wording things. Thomas comes to school, his abusive parents have mysteriously vanished. So that's what's happening in the real world. Then Thomas and Andrew have like this magical fantasy world where they are manifesting creatures and having to fight the creatures every night in the forest based on their stories and their drawings. And it's about like keeping, I don't know, everybody in this school safe. Oh God, and I didn't even notice the back. How disgusting. I love this cover. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's really in line with a lot of other covers in the same genre that I've loved, but it just dropped us into a lot. Like all the things that were established, they're just slid in occasionally to give a backstory, but we're just in the forest. Like we are fighting things, and the way that they speak about each other is very intense. And I love teen books for that when they go this direction. It reminds me of like Kay Ancrum's writing, where it's just so unnatural, but the point is, I think, is it gives the feeling that you had in high school, like your first love, or because Andrew and Thomas have a thing going on. There's asexuality rep in here. I'm not sure. Bisexuality, trying to figure out if liking one boy means you're gay or like how to identify. They're in senior year and just the language is very over the top. And I think it fits with the vibe. It's like, he's never just stressed or anxious or worried. It's like he went into class and sat down at his desk with his skin turned inside out. It's like always so body horror in mind with the descriptions, or so hyperbolically described of how it feels to exist and have this like horrific stuff going on, and then having this really deep connection but being so worried about like losing your friendships. The first third, I was just kind of in it and I was reading it and it was whatever. I know my friend Lexi has compared this to I'll Give You the Sun. The twins, the relationships, the description, I totally get it, but it's obviously in the horror situation. Lexi's the one who originally recommended this to me and really put it on my radar. Oh, look how pretty this is too. I've been reading it with the dust jacket on, which I never do. So unlike me. Anyway, I'm just getting into it now. I feel like I've gotten my bearings and I'm enjoying it. So I'll see you in a second with my final thoughts. And my final rating for this is gonna be a 4. I would have enjoyed it even more like 5 years ago. I don't think I would have rated it higher. I don't think it would have been like an all-time favorite, but it definitely aligns with what I was reading and what was like piquing my interest at the time. I did an entire series where I was reading 5-star predictions, and I'm pretty sure like 75% of the picks were this vibe. For most of this, it felt like a 3.5. I really enjoyed the relationship dynamics, the things the book was touching on in general, the paranormal vibes. I love, you know, the concept of your art turning into a creature. That's something I definitely read before, not that I can think of any specific examples, but I don't know that I loved just being from this one character's perspective. I would have liked maybe a more, not necessarily different POVs, but more of a group dynamic where everybody gets the same amount of focus, but it is mostly about our main character and his like isolation, what he's done to himself, what other people are doing to him. There's a lot of interesting things this book has to say. The reason it went to a 4 is because it had a twist, and looking at it now, maybe I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. In fact, when it was leading in a certain direction, I thought I knew the twist, and I think the book was trying to do that, but then there was another twist and I was like, yeah, not like the craziest thing that ever happened in a book, not something I haven't read before, but I just wasn't expecting it. So it's a solid 4. The writing, stunning. Enjoyed myself a lot. The people who've been telling me to go ahead and read this, thank you so much. I got really lucky that this was the shortest one of the bunch. Next up, let's just pick them at the same time. Let's just get this over with. Fiction. The first library hold that comes in. There's some really popular ones in here that I think probably will take a long time, and ones that are less popular. Honestly though, of all the categories I could have just pulled for library holds, this is a good one because I do think that since I have heard of most of these, they will mostly be available at the library. So all of the fiction books were available for me to place holds on. Almost all of them were also available as audiobooks. You may be thinking crazy that you thought you could even get your hands on any of these books in just a 3-week period. Holds are usually way longer than that. For me, they're not. I usually get the books that I want rather quickly. You may know where this is going, but like even some of the books that I've read for this video, the romance, the nonfiction, they have shown up from the library. But indeed, not a single fiction release has shown up. Not one. And some of them only have like one hold, but yeah, I don't know. So I asked in the video if you think that Libby holds should count, and most people said yes, because that's still using the library, that's still getting a book. It would have been more fun to go to the library and see like what popped up on the shelf in my reservations, and we could have like vlogged that together. And also not a single Libby hold came in. Not one. I reserved all of them. I did. I reserved every single one of them, and not one has shown up. Haven't gotten a single notification saying the book is ready for you. So at this point, I'm not really sure what to do. I was thinking maybe you just want me to pick something like fun that I would want to read. The thing is, I waited as long as physically possible to film this part to see if anything would show up, and I'm in my last 3 books. In fact, I'm currently reading physically something for the next category, and I want to have an audiobook going, so I have a physical read and an audio read today. I need to finish 2 books today. So what I was thinking is I will go back, is it this notebook? I have a list, okay, I have a list of the original ideas that I had for the things that were gonna be in the jar. The things I pulled out, the shortest book, my mom picks my book, a book I've never heard of, a book on my TBR, all the things you've already seen. I had a couple ideas that didn't go through. So maybe I pick a new one. Okay, one of my options was to pick from a jar. That was the first one I came up with. And it just didn't sound that interesting because I was already picking all the prompts out of the jar. This one is can read for free. That was one of my ideas, but that didn't really sound like a prompt necessarily. It sounded like a challenge within the challenge. Read page 100 of all of the books was one of my ideas. Considering I don't have the books right now, that'd be really difficult. I just wrote down I choose for one of them, which like I kind of am already choosing for multiple of them. I also wrote down the first one that shows up, like when I walk into a bookstore, the first book that I see, and I just feel like that would be difficult for me to film, so I got rid of it. Close your eyes and pick, and then one of them was to read The Loser because I wanted to do the library one, and I have a prompt that was to read something for free. I think I probably have a couple of these fiction books in my Libro library because I'm a part of the ALC program, like I said, and I feel like a couple of these might be picks. Oh, I have Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I don't know why I downloaded that because I wasn't super interested in it, to be honest. And oh, I have The Wedding People by Allison Espatch. Now that I've said Intermezzo, I feel like people are gonna wish me to read that one, but I'm gonna go with The Wedding People because I remember watching a video where someone was reading the first chapter of books. Maybe it was Ashley, maybe I made that up. And judging them and like sharing about them, and then she like picked ones to continue with. I think that's what that video was. And The Wedding People was one of them. And the way she pitched it was this woman went to a wedding that she wasn't invited to. Like she just happened to be in the same hotel as this wedding is going on. And she's there to end her own life. But she like runs into the bride, and the bride is like, you can't do that on my wedding day. And then I guess they connect or something. And I think that sounds interesting. I like books about that, where somebody is kind of down and having to find a reason to live. And also I like books that revolve around weddings, and I love the cover. I think this is the one that I said in the fiction category was my favorite cover. I'm gonna go ahead and read this because at least I got it for free. I don't want to spend any more money on books, and I will update you as the day goes on with how that read goes. I'm kind of bummed I don't have a physical version of this book. I might order it from Book of the Month if I end up giving it a 4 or a 5. There are so many quotes I want to highlight. I also don't really know how to talk about this one because it is somewhat about suicidal ideation. I think navigating a conversation around it is a little challenging. The main character and the decisions that she's making, and like when, I guess, decisions are made in the book about what she's going to do. Like, is that a spoiler? I don't know. Her life is kind of in shambles. Her partner has left her, and she's reflecting on a lot of their life together, what it was like, what she feels like she's been missing out on. She just had a very like normal, safe existence. And that's what her husband always wanted because, you know, how you grow up impacts the kind of life you want to have as an adult. And so she was always kind of grasping for more, wanting to go on this vacation, wanting to do this, wanting to do that. And he was always not in like, it didn't seem like they had a terrible, tumultuous relationship, but he would shoot down her ideas or just not make her feel very supported in her desires. Yet on the surface, it looks like he's very supportive because she is a professor and she's always writing this book, and she's never really committed to the book, and it's always just something that's happening. She's like, oh, I'm writing my book, I'm writing my book. And he always tells everyone, oh, she's just at home taking care of her book. Oh, she's gonna publish this book. Meanwhile, like, they both know she's not actually moving forward with it. She doesn't really have any big dreams and ambitions, but she's always so busy. There's always something to do. There was this quote because she's at this hotel and she has nothing to do, nothing to think about. Like, she's at the end of her life in her mind. It's like really thoughtful at the same time as it is funny because she's at this hotel. She's not supposed to be there. When they booked her the room, they thought she was part of the wedding. The whole hotel's for the wedding. And she runs into the bride, and the bride's like, you're not supposed to be here. Like, what are you doing here? And so all of these plans that this woman had, her name's Phoebe, our main character, the bride's name is Delilah. She was like, I'm going to have room service. I'm going to have my last meal. And because all of the people working there are focused on the wedding. There's also, it's COVID times. It's very heavily mentioned in the book. She doesn't get to eat anything, so she has to like go down and like kind of insert herself into the wedding a little bit. So it's like kind of funny because these things are thwarting her plans. It's not a humorous book, but the situations feel a little bit silly. But the quote that I really liked is, in the last 10 years, there's always been something to do, too much to do. The dissertation that needed to become a book, research that needed to become a PowerPoint, the sex that needed to become a baby, students that needed her to run their lives. And now she has nothing to do, nothing to distract her, nothing to focus on. And there is a lot about fertility and the desire to have a baby, and how she felt all of this pressure to make sure they felt like their lives were perfect without this baby, that everything was perfectly normal, and like every single situation had to be just as happy as it would be if they had a baby, because they have to come to grips with maybe it'll never happen for them, and can this couple truly be happy without it? There are moments where Lila and Phoebe are together and she's like laughing. She's like, stop making me laugh. I'm gonna laugh so hard I'm not gonna be able to breathe or something. And Lila goes, isn't that your whole goal? So Lila's not taking it very seriously, but also she's not a very likable character. So I don't know if I'm supposed to think that it's funny the way that Lila's behaving, or if I'm supposed to think it's fucked up of her that she is making light of the situation. But I mean, Phoebe just dropped this on her, like she's traumatizing her, thinking that she's going to impact this woman's decision to end her life or not. Like she's going to be a participant, a witness to it. But I feel as though, and you might consider this a spoiler, so I'll put a spoiler on the screen, but I feel as though 30% of the way in, she has already decided she's not going to end her life, and maybe she wasn't ever going to begin with. So I'm trying to decide if this is the kind of hook that people would, I mean, it's in the Goodreads Choice Awards, so people obviously like it. It was a Jenna's book club pick. It's book of the month. Libra FM is promoting it. So obviously people are into it. I just feel like there might be some pushback on like if this is good representation or not. It's not really deep diving into, you know, depression or mental illness, and a state that a lot of people are in this situation. She's more just like, oh yeah, that was just a silly idea, I'm not actually gonna do it. And now she's just like kind of not living it up at this wedding, but the purpose of the book has changed. She's like doing all of these various activities because she gets involved in the wedding. And so I just don't really know what's going to come for the 70% of this book. She's already made this decision that usually comes at the end of these types of novels, when you discover what you truly want out of life. She still has to figure that out, but yeah, I don't know what the plot's gonna be from here. I am liking it. I don't know if I'm coming across properly. I don't even know what to say about this book, besides I am a little shocked at the fact that it's in the Goodreads Choice Awards, that it made it to the top 10. I feel like this is the kind of book that I would read and think afterwards, like I'm giving it a 4. I'm thinking it is similar to books like, I don't know, Luster, or what's the one? The wedding one that everybody's like, oh my God, these characters are so annoying. Same with Luster. It's like the characters are unlikable and they're doing things that are unlikable, and especially when the book like starts to take a turn. So the wedding people becomes about more than just her life. It becomes about her connection with other people, and like in a good way for her, but I don't think it feels good at all to be reading it. So I'm just very surprised that other people have really been enjoying this book, because I know that when I read books with morally gray characters, they tend to get lower average ratings. But I don't know what else to say about the book as far as plot, because the direction that it goes and the things that she is accomplishing or figuring out what she wants in life is such a big spoiler for just the direction that the book goes, like anything that I would want to talk about. It follows a wedding, like some wedding planning stuff. She gets involved. I think it's that typical story that I always say that I like, that's a woman thrown into an unfamiliar circumstance. And I like when it's so random and it's an accident. She just like has no real choice but to become a part of this wedding, and it feels so silly. And they're just like going on all of these little side quests. She has to confront various things in her life, people and ideas that she had about her life. I don't know that it's like the feel-good story that some people might want by the end, but like it also kind of is. It's such a weird book to try to describe. I'm really so delighted that I read it and that I liked it, because if I picked this one going outside of the theme that I was supposed to go with and I didn't like it, oh my gosh, we would have all been like, oh, you should have picked something else. I am gonna buy this and I think I'm gonna reread it. It's definitely humorous. It's a humorous take considering the subject matter, but it's not laugh out loud funny the way that something like Dial A for Aunties is, which is another wedding. I just love wedding books. Next up, we're going with romantasy. Oh, read a 1 and 5 star review of each book and decide from there. Okay, so at this point, it's round 2 of voting. And I'm thinking maybe I just read the reviews of these 10, or actually, okay, that's a series, that's a series, that's a series, that's a series, and that's a series. So we have 5 out of these 10 that I wouldn't be picking regardless. So I'm just gonna look into the other 5. We've got Quicksilver, The Spell Shop, When the Moon Hatched, A Fate Inked in Blood, and Phantasma. When I tell you I have no clue what any of these books are about, I can't undersell it. I have no idea. And I don't want to read what it's about. I want to go scroll down. I'm going to click 1 star and I'm going to read a review. I want it to be like, see, I don't want to read a DNF. I want to scroll until I find something that is like a chunk that kind of gives what some of the plot is, but isn't, 10 years long. Phantasma, I think, is about a pirate. This 1 star review says, is this the worst book? No, this is generic and boring, made with zero creativity, not like other girls with cringe with insta-love. They were giving MGK and Megan Fox, girl bye. Okay, thank you for your thoughts. 5 stars a little bit longer. The ghost knows what the fuck he's doing. Okay, what? I love this book so much. There was not a dull moment for me. The setting, the backstory, the vibes, the trials, the mystery, the twist, the spice. I was not expecting the spice. Something about him snapping and their clothes falling off really did something for me. Fuck me, he told her, harder, Angel. Come on, Angel, tell me what I can do to make you feel good. I'm at your service after all. This was the perfect dose of gothic, creepy, and a dabble of fantasy. A dabble of fantasy? That did not sell me, but that might be the best that we've got. Next is A Fate Inked in Blood, which I do have easy access to because this is one of my mom's book of the month picks of the year. I don't know if she liked it. I feel like maybe she gave it a 3. Maybe it's like one of those, people have different colored blood and hers is blue, and when they find out, she's like sold to somebody. 1 star for A Fate Inked in Blood. You are mine, born in fire, even if only the 2 of us know it. Norse, it's just a checklist. Norse mythology, don't know if I care. Spicy Viking romantasy, okay. Forbidden romance, sure. Forced proximity, sure. Insta-lust, no thank you. Paired with a slow burn. 1 horse. 1 horse? Oh, like 1 bed, but there's only 1 horse? Is that what it means? And then the 1 star, also a little checklist. If you want new adult romantasy that checks off every single box of the other new adult romantasies, you'll like this. Surly, whiny, hyper-independent FMC with a power that everyone wants. Love interest whose only personality traits are being hot and snarky. Nothing wrong with that. Bad evil man who's evil. Really cringe smut with no build-up. Ooh, that could be a deal breaker. Bad telling, not showing writing. Google researched backdrop. Okay. Then we have When the Moon Hatched, which would be my pick for favorite cover. I just think it's really pretty. Moon Hatched. Is that a dragon? That might be a dragon. Oh, like a hatch. Oh, dragons are hatching. The 5 star. The story unfolds in a realm where the creators never anticipate their dragons transforming into moons upon death. They transform into moons? Or are those moons falling from the sky? Reeve, a formidable member of the rebel group, finds her life upended when captured by a bounty hunter working for the crown, thrusting her into the political games of the Guild of Nobles. In parallel, someone else, overwhelmed by grief, discovers a shocking truth in a fearsome prison that shatters his view of reality. As Rave confronts memories of a happier past, she learns that some truths are too perilous to bear. Okay, here's a 1 star. Listen, I totally get the idea of why BookTok is going absolutely wild for this book. It seems to have everything needed in a romantasy. Elemental magic, dragons, a promising fantasy world, strong female lead, and a protective love interest. Sorry, sounds very promising, doesn't it? But what is beyond me why this book needs 700 pages? It's 700 pages? when there's hardly any plot. I've already turned off, sorry. I was hoping for more insights on the magic in the world and there were hardly any details. Lastly, the spice. What the hell, Sarah? There was no buildup. It was just them hanging out and bam, we have on-page mentions. Okay, the spell shop feels like it should be the one most up my alley because it's like cozy fantasy as opposed to, you know, aggressive sexual fantasy. But I do want a spicy romantasy. Like, sorry, I do. This could be that, but it looks sweet. I didn't like the Honey Witch, which this looks very similar to. Here's the 5 stars. It's whimsical, it's magical, it's lovely. An ideal palette cleanser for the girlies who read darker stuff or need breaks from a longer series. There are talking plants, winged cats, mermaids, and mer horses. A unicorn. No, 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 no. A librarian who loves books more than people and even a centaur. Ooh, I'm out. Horse girls, this is for you. It's cottagecore vibes and fluff that makes my heart happy. I'm just skimming now. I'm not going to be reading this. This is wholesome and pure. No spice. No spice. Cottagecore vibes, whimsy, relatable, MFC. This one, everything exciting happened in the periphery and we were not invited. We instead got to read about someone cleaning for 7 freaking chapters. The romance was so hollow and had no real impact on the story. The main love interest was a horse girl with mean parents, and that's basically his entire being. The main antagonist in the book was talking to other people. I hated this book passionately. Okay. We only have one left and that's Quicksilver. And, oh, the spell shop I didn't really guess because it's about a spell shop. I figured she sells spells or trades spells. Quicksilver, I see now it's a fae in alchemy. I'm guessing this guy is a fairy lord and there's a girl who he steals and brings in. Oh, it also says vampires. The 5 stars says, I am screaming. This book is worth all the hype, all of it. It deserves more. It has it all. Magic I've never read about before. Found family. Okay. Emo Shadow Daddy. A badass FMC that has survived by the skin of her teeth and plot twists galore. I love a plot twist. Emo Shadow Daddy is an interesting phrase. For all those comparing it to ACOTAR, I've never read that, so I don't care. This is my favorite book of the year. Also Fisher, I love him. Okay, now this one's gonna try to persuade me away from it because this might be our pick if this doesn't do it. As someone who typically flies through books, this literally took me multiple tries and then forever to finally finish. This is so overhyped, I don't even know where to begin. First, a human ends up in the Fae world. Exactly. Wow, never seen that before. I mean, I haven't read that many fairy books, so it's not like overdone for me. Her mate is awful, literally treats her like shit. The Shadow Daddy? The Emo Shadow Daddy? She treats her like shit for 70% of the book and then is like, oops, I was doing that to push you away. Okay, it should have worked. What a piece of garbage. I hated him so much. And his name is Kingfisher? His name's Kingfisher? What the fuck kind of name is that? The world building is non-existent, yet makes no sense when she dumps information with no backstory. The gods. The gods came out of literally nowhere. Makes no sense. I hate the FMC just as much because she's also awful. I'm all for grumpy sunshine tropes, but this is just grumpy with obsession over someone that treated her like actual trash. The only reason this book was good was Carrion. He was funny and I truly laughed out loud at some of his lines. The only saving grace to the series would be a book just about him. Listen, this doesn't excite me, but like the other ones really don't. My local indie says this isn't released until December 3rd. I don't know what's happening, but I do like enemies to lovers. I'm gonna commit to it. Now, who is gonna tell me that the book I did pick is just as long as the one that I specifically didn't pick because of the length? Quicksilver is over 600 pages and I'm reading it physically. That is a choice that I made because I got it on its release day and I just feel so important and special. And here's the thing, I'm liking it. Okay, granted, I've only read a couple chapters. I haven't even met the love interest yet, but I'm having a decent time. We're following Saris and she is in a really lowly, poor ward in this like fantasy world. And everybody is starving and struggling. You have to steal, fight, beg to survive. And she steals a gauntlet at the beginning and it's just this action scene of her running away from this guard and she's going to like melt down it and have this wealth so her and her brother can have a better life. Pretty quickly, she leaves the gauntlet somewhere and her brother and the gauntlet are suddenly missing. In the meantime, she went to this local pub and she's talking to this guy, Carrion, who I don't think is the love interest, but he's like very arrogant and charismatic and I liked the vibe between the two of them. the little quick banter we got, but they've like already slept together. So I don't think that's who we just met, because I think this is like a fairy or something, right? Let me see actually what the synopsis says. Ceres comes face to face with death himself. She inadvertently reopens a gateway between realms. Okay, so that is what just happened where I'm at. She had to go face the queen because her brother took the gauntlet. He was gonna sell it or whatever. She stood up for him. It was very like, I volunteer, getting her brother out of trouble. And then she went to the palace and she is talking to some of the guards and people about what her life is like and how they don't have the full grasp of what the caste system is really doing. So I think her goal in this book is going to be to impact that whole situation so everybody is more even. But then she opens this door and is like saved by death, I guess. Is this death? I have a long way to go. I'm only 50 pages in. But she, I don't know, like what's gonna happen in this fairy land? Is she a fairy? Is she someone who can see fairies? I keep reading books like that this year. I like her enough so far. She was a little like sassy towards one of the guards. She's very confident. And then she was also very much like, I have dark hair and blue eyes, which is so rare here. And I'm just like so special. And I'm also really little. But she's got strong morals, convictions. She's really strong. She's been training to fight like secretly. Maybe she has fairy powers. Anyway, I'll update you as this happens. Yep. This is for me. This is for me. Anybody who saw me pick this and went, you're reading about you're reading the emo shadow daddy one? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. As much as I've had a ball this year roasting romantasy, the popular ones that everybody's into, and I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? I don't think I get the girlies who are hating on this. I like it. I like the fantasy and I like the romance. It feels kind of like a slow burn because I don't know, always with romantasy, I'm expecting them to get it on so early in the book, and then it just devolves into sex scenes instead of like world building and fighting and like discovering things and whatever the heck the book is about. But there was some scenes, the perfect little scenes, but it was over 300 pages before like the real thing happened. Okay, and in the meantime, I've just been really enjoying learning about these worlds, where Ceres comes from. He calls her something else, and what Kingfisher is up to. And it does say in the synopsis, she is bound to him, which is not always something that I love, because I want women in books to be able to make their own decisions. I don't want things to be completely influenced. Like I don't want everything to be compulsion, but I do like the thing about compulsion and binding when it's like the person who is the powerful entity. So like Kingfisher here, which I don't understand why so many reviews say they hate the name Kingfisher. I don't know, it's not weirder than like anything else to me. But there often comes a point in these types of stories where he has to wonder if she's actually interested in him or if it's just because of like the powers of his compulsion. And she has to wonder basically if when he tells her to do something, if he actually is saying it because he knows that it can control her, or if he's actually requesting something and wants her to make up her own mind about it. He is giving her a task to do, so he's taken her away from like whatever world she was in. She wants to go back because she wants to save her people, but he wants to use her because the series is called Fae and Alchemy or something like that, and she is an alchemist, which is very rare to find, and she is going to complete this task for him. So she is like serving him in a way, but she's also very confident and bold in herself, and she fights for things. And like when they sit at this big table, she like sits next to him instead of at the other side of the table, and she's like making moves herself, being very bold, not in a way that's like, oh, I'm so attracted to you, but in a way that's like, you don't intimidate me, like I'm gonna sit wherever the fuck I want. And like he's obsessed, he's so obsessed with her. And the reason the scenes have cut off early is because he like doesn't know what he can trust, he doesn't know whatever. And I'm sure there's other things that we will come to understand, but the world that she's in, the things she's getting introduced to, there's like cute little I don't know, creature fairy companions, and her friend Carrion is also here. So there's like a little bit of tension. It's not a love triangle, but he is there for his own reasons, and he's like making Kingfisher jealous, and that's something that I love. So I'm very into it, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I still have 200 pages to go, and I'm like annoyed I have to go to sleep and stop reading this. All right, Quicksilver, happy to report it's a 4. For the first half, thought that this could be like a 4.5. And then I was thinking, no, Kayla, you've lost your mind. I do believe if I read fantasy romance with regularity, this one would not stand out in any way. It didn't feel unique or special in any way. There was fighting scenes that felt really generic. The tender scenes felt pretty generic, but I had a good time with it. I thought it was a really good, solid book. I liked the romance. I liked learning about the fantasy situation. I just never got the feeling that it was doing something like something really special that I would need to tell everybody about. Like, it's a good book. When I said slow burn earlier, I meant specifically like them sleeping with each other. It isn't slow burn as far as their relationship dynamics. They are lusting over each other pretty early on after they meet. But the romantasy that I've been reading, either it has absolutely zero steam or it has steam on like page 30. So I just liked the weight that I had for this. The first half was definitely stronger than the second half. I loved the banter between these characters, and that remained through to the end, but it did get more became more caring, more thoughtful of each other, but also more fantastical. Definitely more learnings and more creature, like we got vampires, we got a lot of fighting, we got a lot of large impact scenes. I don't want to say it dragged because it was very action-packed, but it didn't interest me as much as the first half did. It's definitely that type of story where the main character has some goals, especially like people to save, things to accomplish. Meanwhile, she's sleeping with somebody or like lusting over somebody, thinking about somebody constantly. And in the back of your head as the reader, you're like, but shouldn't you be saving someone right now? Shouldn't you be doing something else? And at least, I will say for this one, she acknowledges that. She said, like in the middle of a lusty scene, she was like, I'm supposed to be helping my brother right now, but I just can't take my eyes away from him. I don't think there was anything I objectively didn't like about this. Maybe there's like a little bit of something weird with tattoos, but it did make for a unique fantasy. I thought it was fun. I liked the steam. I liked the danger. I liked all of the characters. I don't think I'll continue in the series, but maybe I could be convinced. And what's left? Winter? Oh my God, what genre is left? I'm gonna freak out. Is it historical fiction? No, I don't want to read that. I really don't want to read The Women by Kristen Hanna. We've come to the final book of the video, and I was supposed to read The Winner, and the winner's gonna be The Women. I haven't checked yet, but the winners have been announced, and I'll be looking in just a second. But I was thinking, how do I get out of reading The Women? I've been thinking about it because the last couple days as this approached, I have been attempting to read The Women, and I like it just as much, read nothing, as I thought I would. I just don't think I vibe with this author's writing style. I didn't like The Nightingale. I DNF'd something else from her. And I had watched a video earlier this year of somebody ranting about The Women in a video, and I watched the entire rant, which included spoilers. And I still wanted to give it a shot, so I listened to the audiobook a couple chapters a couple days ago, and then I tried it again, and I'm just not interested in it. So we're gonna look right now, and I'm gonna see that it won. And here's the deal that I'm gonna make. Because I've already like switched up some of the other, well, one of the other prompts because like the library one failed, so I had to swap it out. Since I already have not completed the prompts to their fullest extent, like I've already cheated in a way, I don't care about cheating now. So here's what I'm going to do. If I go to the winners and I have already read one of the winners in this video, not prior, because we all know the funny story is going to win romance, which I read before this video. But if any of the things that I've already read here won their category, then I'm just gonna say, hey, I've already read one of the winners, and so I don't need to, like, I've already done it. I've already accomplished this goal somewhere else. Just like with the library prompt, I did read a library book, just not in the prompt it was assigned for. So if I've already read a winner, then I'm just gonna pick whatever I want from the historical fiction category. If I haven't read a winner already, I will commit to reading the first 10 chapters of The Women to at least give it one last effort, and I will tell you about the first 10 chapters and I'll give it a miniature review of my first impressions. And then I'll still pick something else and read something else, which I haven't even considered what that would be. Since I love a prediction moment, let's see if I think any of these will have won their category. Not this one for romance. Maybe this one for YA fantasy, just because I don't really remember what else is in that category. I definitely don't think Quicksilver will have won. I don't think this one ended up in the top 10. James, it wouldn't have won historical fiction. Wouldn't that be great? And then I've already read the historical fiction winner. I think it could win audiobook. There's Frida McFadden in mystery thriller, but I do think this will be in like the top 5 based on its popularity that I've seen. This one definitely did not make it into the top 10. Oh my gosh. The Wedding People. I don't have that physically. I wasn't even thinking about that. That one won fiction. I never would have thought, wow, I thought this was going to be a build up because we were going to have to wait to see and scroll to see what won. But fiction is the very first one. And The Wedding People got almost 100,000 votes. Meanwhile, Intermezzo got 67,000. That is really surprising to me. Oh, and the one we actually care about, The Women, is what won historical fiction, as expected, with 4 times as many votes as James. First Light Winds was actually second place in mystery thriller. The winner was The God of the Woods, which I totally agree with. Romantasy, oh, there was a Sarah J. Maas in there. A funny story for romance. The Stephen King, obviously, won the horror category. The Ministry of Time won science fiction, which I DNF'd. Debut was How to End a Love Story. I would have liked to give that a try. Audiobook, oh, funny story. I forgot that was in there. So anyway, let's pick something from historical fiction. I can tell you my favorite, none of these are on my TBR. My favorite cover is The Great Divide. And then also Anita de Monte, Laughs Last. I'm so glad I successfully read a winner and I can avoid The Women. The Book Lovers Library obviously sounds like something I should like. The Lion Women of Tehran. I feel like I've seen a couple people read this week. I just need to look into these a little bit more. Make sure I'm not reading a super long one because I need to get the vlog up. So I'll see you in a second with my decision. So I decided on The Lion Women of Tehran by Marhan Kamali. This sounded the most interesting to me, and it reminds me a little bit of Girls Burn Brighter, which is a story of 2 young girls. You're following them through life as they get separated. They have this great connection and they get separated, and it's their desperate attempt to come back together. This one is set in Iran. The story of their youth begins in the 1950s. They're 7 years old and they meet at school, Ellie and Hama. And Ellie, okay, well, the book opens with Ellie's perspective saying that she hasn't spoken to Hama in like 17 years, and then suddenly she's reached out to in this letter. So for the first half of the story, it's like exactly 50% of the way through where you find out why they haven't spoken, the thing that kind of broke their friendship apart. And it was so, I guess like it wasn't unexpected because of the trajectory of the story and what these girls are caring about and how they differ. Ellie grew up with a certain amount of wealth, but when her father dies, her uncle takes it all and her mother is left with nothing. So they have to move into this lesser neighborhood. And Ellie starts school and meets this girl, Hama, and her mother is very much like, no, I don't want you dealing with this peasant girl. I don't want you interacting with the people around here. But they become these very close friends, and Ellie learns how to cook and learns how to be a good friend and like learns all of this stuff from Hama and her family. There was this line about how she learned how to chop onions and how she felt this power for the first time of being able to shape something into something else. Then in part 2, we jump to them when they're in like 12th grade, and Ellie has gotten back into her wealthy lifestyle and has gone back to the life she had before. And Hama shows up at the high school and she's like, let's reconnect, let's be friends. But Ellie has crafted this different like popular life for herself and doesn't want to have Hama interrupt it because Hama is a very different person. They care about different things socially, politically. And now I'm 60% of the way through. I'm loving this so much. I think it's beautifully written and I am just so intrigued by the story and these characters. It's all so vivid and I just can't imagine what's about to happen because we've already had an impactful moment. We've already had a friendship destroyed. They've already had like a kind of resolution, and now I don't know what we're gonna be following in their lives, but I can't wait to find out and what happens when they finally reconnect as like older women, or if we're even gonna get to see that, or if we're just gonna have to like read a letter. I'll let you know my reading though when I finish it. The audiobook is definitely good. I wish I had the physical book. I have a feeling I'm gonna go buy it. I'm very happy to report I'm giving this one a 5. I'm so happy that I read it. I'm happy that I switched things up for this prompt. This video has gotten very long. I just edited it. So I'm gonna cut myself a little bit short. I just really liked following these two women. I liked the introduction, the comparison or metaphor or whatever you want to call it between their broken friendship and the broken alliances between countries. Obviously, I wasn't thinking about the historical part of this when I talked about the fact that I don't know where the story's gonna go. If I was actually thinking about it, the years that this is set in, there's a lot of uncertainty and horrific things happening between Iran, Iraq, the United States, and the history of women's rights in Iran is an especially important topic now and then. So seeing what these women are grappling with, whether they're living there or their families are still there, the decisions that they have to make, I think this story was about them finding power, finding a purpose. Even though their purposes are so different, something brings them back together. And the first half of the book, the question was what broke them up? And in the second half, the question was what's going to bring them back together? Because of what has occurred, you can't necessarily imagine a world in which they would be talking again or everything would come to light properly. So there was a little bit of a wait to see like what was the instigating moment that made one of them reach back out to the other. And I think that it was it was devastating, but it was beautiful. I loved everything about this, and I'm just so happy that I found another 5-star for the video. So that's it. It's all wrapped up. I'm glad I did this for a second year in a row. I don't think I'm gonna do it next year. I think I'm gonna go back to reading an entire genre. You go ahead and guess what you think it might be down below or what you might want it to be. So we had some losses for sure. There were a lot that just went okay, which is pretty typical of my reading for the year. A lot of 3 stars to be seen. Quite happy with my 4 stars that happened. I hate buying books full price and then they flop. And then my 4.5s and 5s. Really happy to see, happy to have read. In general, there were more good things than bad things, which you should expect reading a whole bunch of nominees because these are the books that everybody is so excited about. And then at the end of these 3 weeks, I started the entire thing having read 17 of the 272 Goodreads Choice Award nominees. And now I have read 32. Nowhere near a large selection, but I have more of an idea of the popular books, what people are reading and loving, and I love that about the Goodreads Choice Awards. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these or you're going to now, if I swayed you in one direction or another, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye!